Jack woke early the next morning to the sound of his alarm clock. Outside, the dawn was just breaking over the Boston suburbs. It was 6:30 in the morning, a typical time for the Walsh family to start their day. He quietly turned off the alarm and stretched, trying not to wake his wife, who was sleeping next to him. Lisa lay with her back to him, her light brown hair spread out across the pillow. Jack carefully got out of bed and tiptoed across the room to the bathroom. The cool water helped him wake up completely. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, he ran a hand through his dark hair, noticing a couple of new gray strands at his temples. Another typical Wednesday, he thought with a slight smile. After a quick shower and dressing in his usual jeans and shirt, Jack went down to the kitchen. The cozy room was filled with the aroma of freshly ground coffee. The first thing he did was turn on the coffee maker, knowing that Lisa appreciated hot coffee in the morning. While the coffee was brewing, Jack peered into the children's rooms. Sophia and Max were still asleep. Sophia, the 12-year-old daughter, was curled up under the covers, her dark bangs barely visible on the pillow. In the next room, 8-year-old Max was sprawled on his back, hugging a battered teddy bear in his sleep. Jack quietly closed the doors, allowing the children an extra 15 minutes of sleep, and returned to the kitchen. The coffee was ready. Jack poured it into 2 mugs. At that moment, footsteps were heard. Lisa appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a warm robe. She still looked sleepy, but catching the aroma of coffee, the corners of her lips twitched in a semblance of a smile. "Good morning," Jack said quietly, handing his wife a mug. "Morning," Lisa responded in a muffled voice, taking the coffee in both hands. She took a sip and sighed slightly. "Thank you." Jack kissed her lightly on the cheek. Lisa nodded habitually, although her eyes were still half asleep. "Have you had a long day today?" he asked, taking a sip from his mug. "Yes, it looks like it." Lisa stretched and sat down at the table. "Sophia has swimming training in the evening. Don't forget to take her by 6. "Of course I remember," Jack nodded. "And I'll pick Max up from after-school care after work." Lisa nodded again and took another sip of coffee. "How are you? It seems you went to bed late," he noted, looking closely at her face. Lisa shrugged. "I couldn't fall asleep right away. I was tossing and turning, thinking about work." Jack smiled knowingly. Lisa worked as an accountant for a small firm, and the end of the quarter was always stressful for her. He touched her arm lightly. "It's okay, the reporting period will end soon, and you'll be able to get some sleep." "Yes, I'll be only too glad," she answered quietly, smiling slightly in response. Impatient footsteps were heard on the stairs. It was Max, waking up, running down, still in his pajamas. "Dad, Mom, good morning," he exclaimed cheerfully from the kitchen threshold, rubbing his eyes with his fists. Jack put down his mug and squatted down to hug his son. "Good morning, champion," he said, ruffling the boy's blonde hair. "How did you sleep?" "Okay," Max muttered, immediately aiming at the bread bin with toast. "I'm hungry." Jack smiled. "We'll think of something now. Sit down, I'll make you some toast with peanut butter." Sophia appeared in the doorway next. Unlike her brother, she descended slowly, not yet fully awake. "Hello, sunshine," Jack said to her. Sophia just nodded sleepily and sat down on a chair at the table, covering her mouth with her hand, suppressing a yawn. "Sophia, you have half an hour before school," Lisa gently reminded her daughter. "Don't forget to pack your training uniform, okay?" "Yeah," the girl responded indistinctly, burying her forehead in her palms. Jack, meanwhile, set about making breakfast for the children. He threw bread into the toaster and got milk and cereal out of the fridge for Sophia. This was how she preferred to start her day. Max, meanwhile, eagerly awaited his toast. "Dad, can you play Lego with me tonight?" Max asked unexpectedly, swinging his legs under the table. Jack turned from the stove. "Sure, buddy. After we get home, we'll have some time before bed." Max nodded happily. Sophia only looked tiredly at her brother from under her brows. "You only have toys on your mind." "Sophia," Jack said quietly, "don't grumble in the morning." The girl rolled her eyes, but said nothing, staring at the bowl of cereal her mother had placed before her. A few minutes later, breakfast was ready. The four of them ate. Sophia lazily picked at her cereal with a spoon, and Max gobbled up toast with gusto. Lisa drank coffee and ate a piece of toast, absent-mindedly looking out the window at the street flooded with morning sun. Jack glanced at his wife. She seemed thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. Lisa shuddered, as if coming out of her reverie. "Oh, just nothing special. Just thinking about my plans for the day." Jack nodded understandingly and didn't ask any questions. After breakfast, the family began to get ready. Lisa helped Sophia find a swimming cap and bathing suit. Jack tied Max's shoelaces and checked that his son had put all his textbooks in his backpack. Around 8 in the morning, everyone was ready to go. The Walsh house was on a quiet street in a leafy suburb, surrounded by a well-kept garden. Jack loaded the children's backpacks into the back of his station wagon. It was his turn to drive the kids today, Sophia to school, then Max to primary. Lisa kissed both children before getting into the car. "Behave well, okay? Max, listen to the teacher." "Okay, Mom," the boy nodded seriously. Sophia shrugged. "As if I were little," she muttered. "Nobody says that," Lisa replied wearily. "Have a nice day, sunshine." Lisa headed toward her car, which was parked nearby. Jack watched as his wife climbed into the silver sedan and pulled out of the driveway, waving goodbye. He waved back, then loaded the kids into the back seat of his car. In the car, Max continued to chatter nonstop, sharing with his father his plans to build a giant spaceship out of Lego bricks with a friend during recess. Jack listened through the rearview mirror with a smile, interjecting encouraging words like "great" and "great idea." Meanwhile, Sophia put on her headphones and looked out the window, lost in her thoughts. Jack first drove Sophia to the high school. She reluctantly took off her headphones when the car pulled up in front of a familiar building. "Have a nice day, Soph," Jack said to his daughter, turning around. "Bye, Dad," she replied quietly, throwing her backpack over her shoulder. "Bye, Max." The boy waved energetically to his sister. "Bye." Jack watched Sophia walk toward the school doors, then pulled away. Now it was Max's turn. 10 minutes later, they pulled up to the elementary school. It was almost time for the bell to ring, and parents and children were crowded around the entrance. Jack parked and got out to walk his son to the schoolyard. Max held his father's hand tightly, looking around for his friends. "Remember, I'll pick you up at 5, okay?" Jack remembered, leaning toward his son. "Okay, Dad," Max nodded. He suddenly rushed to hug his father. "Bye." Jack smiled and patted his son on the back, then gently pushed him away. "Everything will be fine. Run to the guys." Max ran to his classmates and soon disappeared into the school building. After making sure the kids were safely on their way to class, Jack returned to the car. Now the road to the office awaited him. Jack worked as a civil engineer for a large company in Boston. He had about a half-hour drive ahead of him in the morning traffic. Usually, he would listen to the news or music on the radio, but today he found himself thinking about Lisa. Her tired face over her morning coffee kept coming to his mind. "I'll have to see how she's doing tonight," he decided, stepping on the gas. The company's office was located in downtown Boston in a glass multi-story building. Jack went up to his floor and nodded to several colleagues as he passed through the reception. The department was already bustling with activity. Employees were sorting through mail. Someone was calling contractors. Jack found a fresh set of blueprints at his desk. He sat down on a chair and began to look through the papers. A few minutes later, Sam Marshall, his best friend and part-time colleague, walked past. Sam, a tall, dark-haired man with an open smile, looked into Jack's office with a mug of coffee in his hand. "Hey, old man," he said cheerfully, "ready for another exciting day?" Jack looked up from his papers and smiled at his friend. "Hey, Sam, what can I do? I'm ready. You're early today." "I had to," Sam shrugged and went inside. "The boss asked me to check the estimate for the Pine Street project, so I've been sitting in numbers since morning." "Need some help," Jack offered. Sam waved his hand. I'll figure it out, but thank you. Better tell me how things are at home. Lisa, the kids, are everything okay? Jack nodded, leaning back in his chair. Yes, everything is fine. Sophia barely woke up again today. You know how teenagers are. And Max, as usual, is running around in the morning, full of energy. Sam chuckled. I can imagine. You're taking Sophia to training today, aren't you? Yeah, at 6 in the evening, Jack confirmed. Well, you'll have time. There are no meetings planned for this afternoon. Good, by the way, Jack responded. Otherwise, Lisa will probably be late at work. I see. Well, if anything happens, call me, I'll cover you, Sam winked. Jack smiled gratefully. He was truly lucky to have such a friend and colleague. He and Sam had been friends for almost 10 years, ever since they had joined the company together after university. Sam soon returned to his desk, and Jack plunged into work. The morning in the office went on as usual. A couple of weeks had passed since that quiet family morning. During that time, Jack had increasingly noticed changes in Lisa's behavior. She had become more withdrawn and nervous. In the evenings, instead of the usual conversations over dinner, Lisa would sit lost in her thoughts or scroll through her phone with a detached look. If Jack asked about her day, she would answer in monosyllables or brush him off, citing fatigue. One evening, Jack returned from work to find his wife in the kitchen. Lisa was preparing dinner, cutting vegetables for a salad, but she was so deep in her thoughts that she didn't immediately notice him entering. Hi, I'm home, Jack said quietly, putting his briefcase on a chair. Lisa shuddered and turned around. Oh, hi. I didn't hear you come in. Jack noticed that Lisa's eyes were red, as if she had recently cried. He approached her worriedly. Is everything okay? He asked, trying to look into her face. Yes, of course, she answered too quickly, looking down at the cutting board. I'm cutting onions, that's why my eyes are watering. Jack nodded, though doubt crept into his soul. He washed his hands and began to get out plates for dinner. The children were noisy in the living room. Sophia was doing her homework at her desk, and Max was watching cartoons. Hearing that their father had returned, they ran into the kitchen one by one to say hello. Jack helped Lisa finish cooking, and soon the family sat down to dinner. At the table, Jack tried to keep the conversation going. Today, the boss announced that our project on Pine Street has been approved by the board of directors. He shared the news. But Lisa only nodded absent-mindedly, barely raising her eyes from her plate. Yeah, that's good. Sophia seemed to sense her mother's tension, too. The girl glanced quickly at Lisa, then asked her father, Dad, can I invite a friend over for a sleepover on Saturday? Jack smiled at his daughter. I think it's possible, but you need to come to an agreement with your mother. He looked at Lisa, expecting support. His wife nodded automatically. Yes, of course, if you clean the room. There was a pause. Max, who usually chatted incessantly, was also quiet this time. He was enthusiastically eating mashed potatoes, occasionally glancing at his parents. Jack tried to get his wife to talk again. Liz, have you been working a lot today? She looked at him as if waking up. Yeah, the office is a mess, she muttered. Sorry, I'm tired. It's okay, he said quickly, not wanting to push. Maybe you should rest after dinner. I'll put the kids to bed myself. Lisa smiled wearily. Thank you, dear. I guess I will. After dinner, Lisa actually went to bed almost immediately, citing a headache. Jack took care of the children, checked Sophia's homework, read Max a short bedtime story. When the children were asleep, Jack quietly entered the bedroom. The light from the night lamp illuminated the silhouette of Lisa lying under the blanket. She was lying with her back to him, seemingly asleep. He undressed, carefully hanging his shirt over the back of a chair. Sitting down on the edge of the bed, Jack hesitantly touched his wife's shoulder. Liz, are you sleeping? Lisa didn't move. After a few seconds, quiet, even breathing could be heard. It seemed she was fast asleep. Jack sighed and lay down next to her, trying not to disturb her. In the darkness, he stared at the ceiling for a long time, feeling a vague anxiety. Something had definitely changed. Before, they often talked about the past day before going to bed and shared their thoughts. Now, it was as if Lisa had fenced herself off with an invisible wall. The situation did not improve in the following days. Lisa stayed late at work more and more often, coming home late. One night, she returned almost at 10 o'clock when the children were already asleep. Jack was waiting for her in the living room, trying hard to suppress his anxiety. When the key clicked in the lock, he stood up to greet his wife. "You're late. I started to worry," he said instead of greeting. Lisa looked tired, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. She took off her coat and threw it on the back of the sofa. "Yes, there was an emergency situation at work. I had to stay late." She passed him in the hallway, and Jack caught a whiff of men's cologne mixed with wine. It was a scent that didn't belong to their home or to Lisa. Jack's heart sank, but he tried to remain calm. "Have you been drinking?" he asked as evenly as possible. Lisa turned around, visibly wary. "What? No. Well, maybe a glass of wine with colleagues after work. Needed to relieve stress." "I see," Jack said slowly, looking into her face. "With colleagues? With someone from the office?" Lisa paused. "Yes, the girls from the accounting department decided to sit down, and I joined in. Jack, I really don't want to discuss this now. I'm terribly tired." Jack raised his hands in a conciliatory gesture. "Okay, of course. Go and rest." Lisa nodded, avoiding meeting his gaze, and quickly disappeared into the bathroom. Left alone, Jack felt a sense of unease growing inside him. He couldn't remember the last time Lisa had closed herself off from him like this. Something was wrong, but what? He tried to convince himself that it was just the effects of work and fatigue, but the doubts wouldn't go away. Maybe she has problems she's not talking about, he thought. Perhaps she needs a rest or a change of scenery. The next day, wanting to cheer up his wife, Jack suggested going to a restaurant or a movie together on the weekend. In the past, such short dates helped them escape the routine. However, Lisa responded sluggishly. "I don't know," she said vaguely when Jack mentioned dinner on Saturday. "We'll see closer to the weekend. I'm not promising anything. Maybe I'll have something to do." Jack frowned in surprise. "What else is there to do on Saturday evening?" Lisa just shrugged. "I don't know yet. I just don't want to plan." Jack tried to object. "Lisa, you hardly spend time with me and the kids lately," he said quietly. "Maybe we should find an evening for the family. It would do us all good." The wife abruptly put the cup of tea on the table, and the tea spilled over the edge. "Jack, please don't push me. I'm really tired. I don't have the strength to go out." In the silence that followed, Jack felt rejected. He rose from the table. "Okay, whatever you say." Lisa lowered her eyes and added more quietly. "Maybe later, okay? Don't be mad at me." "It's okay," Jack replied, trying to hide his disappointment. But the unpleasant feeling still remained. On Friday, during his lunch break, Jack was sitting in a cafe near the office with Sam. Usually, they chatted about sports or work, but today Jack was unusually silent. "What's wrong?" Sam asked, taking a bite of his sandwich. "You look kind of gloomy." Jack twirled his paper cup of coffee in his fingers, debating whether he should share. He and Sam had always been frank, and now he really wanted to talk. "Yes, at home, there are some minor problems," he finally said reluctantly. Sam put down his sandwich. "Something wrong with Lisa?" Jack raised his eyebrows. "Did you notice too?" Sam shrugged. "No, nothing special. You just said to yourself that she gets very tired." Jack exhaled and finally shared. "She's moving away. She's kind of cold, as if I irritate her with my very presence." A look of concern flashed across Sam's face, but he quickly pulled himself together. "Maybe she really is tired. You said she was swamped with work. Sometimes people need to be alone with themselves." "It wasn't like that before." Jack shook his head. "We always shared our problems. Now I feel like she's far away from me." Sam paused, then put his hand on his friend's shoulder. "Listen, don't get worked up ahead of time. Try to do something nice for her. Give her flowers or surprise her. Remind her that you love her." Jack smiled weakly. Thank you, I will do so. However, Jack's anxiety did not go away. Deep down, he began to suspect that it was not just work or fatigue. He tried to push the unpleasant guesses away, hoping that everything would work out on its own. Late Friday night, Jack was getting ready to go to bed later than usual. The kids were already asleep, and Lisa was lingering in the living room, saying she was finishing her tea and checking something on her laptop. Jack lay in bed, checking the news on his phone, trying to distract himself from his heavy thoughts. Half an hour later, Lisa finally came into the bedroom. She looked tense and tired. It's been a hard day today. I think I'll take a shower before bed, she said quietly, not meeting her husband's gaze. Okay, Jack responded. Get some rest. Lisa took her clean pajamas and disappeared into the bathroom. A minute later, the sound of running water was heard. Jack put his phone down. His gaze involuntarily fell on the bedside table where Lisa's phone was lying. Usually, she took it with her everywhere, but now the device was next to the bed. Suddenly, the screen lit up. A message had arrived. Jack didn't mean to look, but out of the corner of his eye, he saw the sender's name, Sam. My heart sank. Sam never wrote to Lisa late at night. Without realizing what he was doing, Jack reached for his phone and unlocked the screen. The chat window opened, and the latest messages immediately caught his eye. Sam, I miss you. Thank you for this evening. Love you. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He blinked a couple of times, not believing what he was seeing. But the words on the screen were real and unambiguous. His throat went dry. Barely breathing, Jack scrolled up the conversation. There were dozens of messages, full of hidden passion and tenderness. Lisa and Sam discussed secret meetings, exchanged confessions. Sam, I can't wait to see you again. Lisa, me too. Today was wonderful. The world swam before his eyes. Jack felt his hands shaking. Each line confirmed the terrible truth. His wife was cheating on him with his best friend. The water in the bathroom turned off. Jack froze, sitting on the edge of the bed, and did not take his eyes off the screen. Everything inside him was getting cold and burning at the same time. The bathroom door opened, releasing a cloud of steam. Lisa, wrapped in a terry robe, came out, wiping her damp hair with a towel. Seeing her husband sitting with her phone in his hands, she stopped dead in her tracks. Her face instantly turned pale. For a few seconds, both were silent. Then Lisa asked quietly in a trembling voice, Jack, what are you doing? Jack slowly looked up. He was silent, feeling like his words were stuck in his throat. Instead of answering, he unclenched his fingers, tossing the phone onto the bed, and said quietly, How could you? Lisa's gaze darted to her phone, still displaying the incriminating message. Her lips trembled. Jack, it's not what you think. She squeezed out barely audibly. Jack rose to his feet, anger flaring in his chest, mixed with unbearable pain. Not what I think, his voice broke. It says I love you here. Sam says he loves you. Do you really dare to deny the obvious? Lisa wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to protect herself. Please, let me explain. Explain? Jack raised his voice, feeling the traitorous tears burning his eyes. You cheated on me with my best friend, and now you want to explain something. Lisa burst into tears. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, Jack shouted, not holding back. You broke up our family. How long did this go on? A month? A year? Lisa sobbed, trying to pull herself together. A few months. She admitted through tears. Jack, I'm so sorry. He shook his head in shock. Sorry? You're sorry? After you. He stopped, unable to say the words out loud. How could you do this to me? To the children? Lisa stepped closer, holding out her hand. I didn't look for this on purpose. It all went too far. It became cold between you and me, and I felt unnecessary. And Sam, he was there, he supported. The name of his friend only fueled Jack's rage. Supported? He thundered. He came to our house, sat at the same table with me. I trusted him like a brother, and he betrayed me, Just like you. Jack was breathing heavily, his chest heaving. Lisa was sobbing openly. Forgive me, please. Jack was seething inside. He didn't know what was worse, losing his wife or betraying his friend. He felt both empty and mad with pain. A soft sound came from the bedroom door. Sophia stood in her pajamas. Her daughter's big eyes were shining with tears. Mom, Dad, why are you shouting? Jack froze, staring at his daughter. A new lump rose in his throat, this time from the realization that the children had witnessed this nightmare. Lisa frantically wiped away her tears with her palms, trying to pull herself together. Sophia, darling, everything is fine, she said in a trembling voice. Go to sleep, honey. Daddy and I are just talking. The girl didn't move. She looked at her father, waiting for confirmation. Jack gathered his courage and, softening his voice as much as he could, said, It's okay, Sophia. Go to your room, please. We'll talk later. Sophia nodded doubtfully and slowly disappeared into the darkness of the corridor. When his daughter's footsteps faded, Jack turned to Lisa. He had nothing more to say. His heart felt like stone. He turned and walked quickly toward the exit. Lisa rushed after him. Jack, wait! Where are you going? He didn't stop. In the hallway, he put on the first pair of sneakers he came across and grabbed the car keys from the table. Jack, please don't go. We need to talk. Lisa was sobbing behind his back. Jack opened the door. We'll talk later. I can't right now, he croaked and walked out into the darkness of the night, slamming the door in front of Lisa. The cold night air hit his hot face. Jack walked down the porch and walked to the car. His hands were shaking so badly that he had difficulty getting the key into the ignition. He sat motionless for a few seconds, staring straight ahead with an unseeing gaze. Blood pounded in his temples, tears welled up in his eyes again. Jack slammed his palms on the steering wheel, pouring out his despair. Then, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, he turned the key. The engine rumbled, the headlights slashed across the empty street. Damn! He exhaled, pressing the gas pedal. There was only one thought pulsing through his head: Sam. His best friend, who had betrayed him in the most vile way. Jack didn't know what he would say or do, but he knew he had to see Sam tonight. The quiet, dark street in front of Sam's house was eerily silent. It was almost midnight when Jack slammed on the brakes and jumped out of the car outside Sam's house. Without bothering to find the doorbell, he pounded his fist on the front door as hard as he could. After a few tense moments, footsteps were heard outside the door. The door opened slightly, and Sam appeared on the threshold. He was wearing a t-shirt and jeans. His hair was disheveled from sleep. His face was filled with surprise and anxiety. Jack, he said, stunned. What happened? He didn't have time to finish. Jack swung the door open with a roar, grabbed Sam by the collar of his shirt, and pushed him inside. Sam couldn't resist and crashed back into the wall of the hallway. How could you? Jack roared, moving closer. You were my brother, and you're a bastard. Sam raised his hands in defense. Jack, stop. What are you talking about? Jack couldn't resist. Damn, he groaned. Are you crazy? You're the one who's lost your mind. Jack's voice broke. How dare you sleep with my wife? Sam turned pale. He tried to get up. Listen, he began, but Jack didn't let him get up. I trusted you, he shouted in the traitor's face. You entered my house, sat at my table, and slept with Lisa behind my back. Sam's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. We didn't mean to. It happened that way. Didn't want to? Jack shook him. What exactly did you not want? To sleep with my wife or to betray me? Sam closed his eyes, tears rolling down his cheeks. We didn't plan this, honestly. It all happened by itself. Jack pushed him away and swung again, but this time he managed to hold back. He took a step back, looking at his once best friend with disgust. You should have stopped, he hissed. This is my wife, the mother of my children. Sam was breathing heavily, leaning against the wall. His voice broke. I know. I hate myself for this. Ha, Jack chuckled bitterly. Do you think I care about your feelings? You destroyed my whole life. Sam covered his face with his hands, sobbing. Things have been bad between you and Lisa for a long time. She was unhappy, Jack. Jack froze, looking at him in shock. And that's why you decided to comfort her with yourself. Out of pity, right? Sam wiped his wet face with his sleeve. I fell in love with her, he said barely audibly, and she fell in love with me too. Jack felt a chill run through his gut. The words stunned him, drained him of his rage, and left him empty. So you love each other, he repeated quietly. Sam looked away. I'm sorry. We didn't mean to hurt you. We tried to end it all, but Jack was silent for a few seconds, feeling his anger recede, giving way to despair. I can never forgive this, he finally said hoarsely. Never. Sam took a step forward. Jack, please. Jack raised his hand, not letting him come closer. Don't come near. I can't see you. He shook his head, trying to collect his thoughts. From this moment on, Sam, you no longer exist for me, Jack said quietly, but his voice was steely. Don't you dare come near me or my children. Otherwise. He didn't finish, but the threat in his tone was easy to understand. Sam hung his head, speechless. Jack looked at him for a moment longer, memorizing his pitiful appearance, then unclenched his fists and walked quickly out of the house, slamming the door. Already on the street, he breathed in the cold air, gasping for breath. His hands were sore, his heart was pounding wildly. Jack got into the car. There was emptiness and terrible pain inside him. He dropped his head into his hands and burst into sobs that he could not hold back. It seemed to him that his soul was leaving his chest along with the tears. After about 10 minutes, exhausted, Jack was able to calm down. He wiped his wet face with his sleeve, took a deep breath, and started the engine. Towards morning, Jack returned to his house. It was dark in the windows. He quietly opened the front door and entered. A night light was burning in the living room. Lisa was waiting for him, sitting on the sofa. When he appeared, she jumped up. Jack. Her voice wavered. Are you okay? Jack didn't answer. He walked around Lisa and sank into a chair. He was completely exhausted. I called you. Lisa continued uncertainly. I was afraid. I was at Sam's, Jack said dully, staring at a spot on the floor. Lisa sighed convulsively, clutching the sleeves of her robe with her palms. God. There was silence in the room. Lisa seemed hesitant to ask any questions. A couple of minutes later, Jack looked up at his wife. Her voice sounded surprisingly calm. Pack your things. Today. Lisa turned pale. What things? Yours, you fool, he snapped. I want you to leave here. Anywhere to your sister, too. He grimaced to him. I don't care, but you shouldn't be here. Jack, she whispered, bursting into tears. Please, don't do this. He just shook his head. It's too late, Lisa. I'm filing for divorce. Lisa covered her face with her hands, sinking down onto the couch. Her shoulders shook with sobs. Jack looked at her distantly, feeling only emptiness and anger instead of pity. When Lisa calmed down a little, he said dryly, In the morning, we'll tell the children that you're leaving for a while. Lisa raised her reddened eyes to him. How? How will we tell them? Jack gritted his teeth, trying to maintain his composure. Let's tell half the truth. That Mom and Dad decided to live separately. That we are breaking up. Lisa groaned as if in pain and burst into tears again. Jack turned away, not wanting to see her tears anymore. The morning was hard. The children came down to the kitchen, unsuspecting. Lisa, pale and quiet, tried to smile at them. Jack gathered all his willpower to speak calmly. When breakfast was almost over, he cleared his throat and said, Guys, your mom and I need to tell you something. Sophia became alert, remembering the noise of the night. Max looked with surprise. Mom's going to have to live somewhere else for a while, Jack began carefully. We've decided that we're going to split up. Sophia's eyes widened. Are you getting a divorce? Her voice trembled and broke into a scream. Lisa closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jack quietly replied, "Yes, it looks like that." Max dropped the spoon from his hands. "No, no need," he whispered, and his lips trembled. Sophia jumped up from the table. "Is it because you were screaming last night? I heard it. Why is Mommy crying?" She glanced from her father to her mother. "Sophia, please," Lisa said, sobbing. "It's hard to explain." Jack tried to approach his daughter. "Honey, it just happened that way, but we both love you and Max." However, Sophia suddenly flared up, looking straight at her father. "Is it your fault? Did you do something to Mom?" Jack shook his head. "No, Sophia, it's just that sometimes adults." Lisa interrupted him, whispering through tears. "Forgive me, Sophia. Forgive me, Max." Sophia looked from one parent to the other in confusion. She frowned when she heard her mother's apology. Forgive for what? What happened? Lisa was silent, covering her mouth with her hand. There was a painful pause. Jack said quietly, "Sophia, Max, there were serious problems between Mom and me. But it's not your fault, do you hear? We still love you, it's just hard for us to be together." Sophia straightened, her face tense. "So you destroyed the family simply because it was difficult?" There was bitterness in her voice. "Sophia," was all Jack could breathe out. "I hate you!" The girl suddenly cried out, tears streaming down her face. She ran out of the kitchen, stomping her feet up the stairs to the second floor. "Sophia," Lisa called, but she had already slammed the door in her room. Max cried loudly, looking at his mother. "Mommy, don't go. Please." The boy slid off the chair and rushed to hug Lisa. Lisa burst into tears, hugging her son to her chest. "Honey, I'll come, do you hear? Mom will just live separately, but I'll see you often." Max shook his head, sobbing. "No, I don't want to." Jack felt himself on the verge of tears too. He hugged both Lisa and his son at the same time, trying to console. "We'll all get through this somehow. Max, Mom needs time. Everything will be fine, baby." After a few tearful minutes, Lisa finally went upstairs to pack her things. Max didn't leave her side for a step while she packed her clothes into her bag. Sophia never came out of her room to say goodbye. When Lisa came down to the front door with her duffel bag, Jack was holding Max's hand, crying. Lisa turned to them, her face distorted with grief. "Goodbye," she whispered. "We'll call later." Max started crying again. "Mom, no." Jack stroked his son's head, holding back his own emotions, and said quietly, "Go, Lisa." She stepped over the threshold, then looked back. "I'm sorry," she whispered through tears, looking at Jack. He stood silently, unable to look at her or speak any longer. Lisa lowered her eyes and closed the door behind her. In the silence of the hallway, only Max's sobs remained. Jack dropped to one knee and held his son tightly to him. "I'm here, you're safe with me," he whispered, stroking the boy's back. Max was sobbing convulsively on his chest. At that moment, Sophia came down the stairs. Her eyes were red, her look was gloomy. "We'll be late for school," she said quietly. Jack nodded, letting go of his son. Yes, of course, I'll take you." He helped the children get ready. Sophia was silent, not once looking at her father. Max huddled close to Jack, still sobbing. The drive to school was heavy with silence. Jack drove Sophia first. She got out of the car without even saying goodbye. Max didn't let go of his father's hand until they reached his elementary school. Jack stood at the gate for a long time, watching his son trudge to class with his head down. Returning to an empty house, Jack realized that all that remained of his old life was fragments. His wife had left, his daughter hated him, his son was heartbroken. He sank onto the living room couch, his head in his hands. Ahead of him lay a divorce, a custody battle, and the need to start all over again from scratch. It had been a week since Lisa had left. Jack was living alone with the kids, struggling to cope with his new reality. Every morning he woke up to an empty house, packed breakfast for Sophia and Max, drove them to school, and then drove to the office. Work seemed like the only island of stability in an ocean of personal chaos. However, it was difficult to concentrate on the case. Documents swam before his eyes, and his thoughts kept returning to what had happened. Jack spent his nights almost without sleep, and during the day he felt exhausted. Colleagues noticed that he looked tired and depressed, but few dared to ask about the reasons. There were rumors in the department. Some guessed about problems in Jack's family, although no one knew the details. Sam tried to avoid Jack after that night. He transferred to another project and rarely showed up in the common areas. Jack was glad not to see him. It was enough that he had to put up with his presence in one company. Several times Jack caught the sympathetic glance of Karen Mitchell, a colleague from the design department. Karen was a kind and considerate woman and seemed to understand that Jack was going through a hard time, but he was not yet ready to involve her in his personal troubles. On Wednesday afternoon, as Jack was reviewing the blueprints for the Pine Street project, he received an email marked urgent. Management was calling him to an emergency meeting in the CFO's office. Jack was surprised. Nothing like this had ever happened before. He turned off his monitor and headed to the address with growing excitement. In the small conference room where he had been invited, several people were sitting at a table. The financial director, Mr. Collins, the company's head of security, and two unfamiliar men in formal suits, obviously auditors. The atmosphere was unusually tense. "Good afternoon," Jack greeted quietly as he walked inside. Mr. Collins nodded. "Have a seat, Jack." Jack sat down on the offered chair, trying to figure out what was going on. His heart was sinking unpleasantly. The financial director got straight to the point. "We have called you on a serious matter. Financial irregularities have been discovered in the Pine Street project." Jack didn't understand. "Violations? What violations?" One of the auditors pushed a thin folder towards him. "Here are the documents. These are copies of payment orders and invoices for the last 2 months of the project. Your signatures are here. Look carefully." Jack flipped through the papers. He did indeed see his electronic signature on a number of documents for contractor payments. "Yes, I appear to have endorsed these bills," he said slowly. "What's the problem?" The head of security, a grim elderly man, leaned forward. "The problem is that the transfers went to the accounts of fictitious companies. In other words, the money was taken out to an unknown destination." Jack was taken aback. "What do you mean fictitious?" he asked again. "We paid the contractors who did the work." The auditor opened a folder on a specific page. "For example, an invoice for $50,000 to a certain company called New Age Construction. Did you sign it?" Jack peered at the printout. His digital signature was at the bottom of the document. "The signature seems to be mine, but this is the first time I've heard of such a company," he said, confused. "Perhaps it's a mistake." The second auditor, a young man with glasses, shook his head. "We checked. New Age Construction is not listed among our official counterparties, as are several other companies to which, according to these payments, you sent funds." Jack felt his palms get sweaty. "I want to clarify. How much money was missing?" he asked cautiously. Mr. Collins looked sternly at the papers. "About $200,000. Jack's temples began to pound. "200,000. He repeated, not believing his ears. The head of security continued in the meantime. "You personally approved all the transfers from your computer under your password. Explain how this happened." Jack opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. He never did such an operation deliberately. "I can't explain," he finally said. "I don't remember these bills. I didn't steal the money, if that's what you're implying." Mr. Collins interlaced his fingers. "The situation is so far against you, Jack. The facts are this. A shortage has been discovered, and all traces lead to you." Jack shook his head. "There must have been some kind of mistake. Maybe my login was used without my knowledge, or the signature was forged." The head of security smiled mirthlessly. "Has anyone stolen your password? It's unlikely." Suddenly, it dawned on Jack. He remembered that Sam Marshall had worked on the Pine Street project and had access to the estimates. "Sam," he blurted out. The auditor raised his eyebrows. What did you say? Jack swallowed. Sam Marshall, my colleague, was also involved in this project and may have had access to financial documents. Perhaps it is worth checking him out as well. There was a tense pause in the room. Collins narrowed his eyes. Are you suggesting that we check Marshall for involvement in the theft? Jack realized how this sounded and tried to speak carefully. I'm not asserting anything, I'm just noting that he had similar access rights. What if there was a mistake in his documents too? The head of security responded sternly. We'll check everyone, don't worry. But now we're talking about you. Mr. Collins sighed and leaned back in his chair. I must say frankly, the situation is extremely serious. The board of directors has already been notified. Most likely, the materials will be transferred to law enforcement agencies. To the police, Jack's voice broke. He was truly scared. Yes, such a case falls under the article on fraud, the auditor confirmed. But first, the management wants to hear from you. Perhaps you will confess and explain your motives. Then the company will try to settle the matter quietly. Jack felt himself flush with indignation. Confess? Something I didn't do? No, I won't take on something I didn't do. Collins nodded, as if expecting such an answer. I understand. However, we must also protect the company. He pushed a piece of paper towards Jack. Here is a letter of resignation. The board believes that this is best for everyone. You will leave the company, and we will conduct an investigation quietly in the meantime. Jack stared at the white form in front of him. His head was buzzing. He was being forced to resign under suspicion of a crime. He thought that even if the truth came out later, his reputation would never be restored. His hand trembled involuntarily as he signed his name on the document. Tears of humiliation and anger stood in his eyes. Mr. Collins carefully took the sign sheet. Well, it's a pity that everything turned out this way. You can pack your personal belongings and hand over the affairs. Jack stood up without answering. He was shaking with tension. There was a noise in his ears. He walked almost automatically to his office and began to pack things into a cardboard box. A few books, a framed family photo. He lingered on the smiling Lisa and the children, and pain pierced his heart. His colleagues glanced furtively, whispered to each other. Apparently, rumors spread quickly. Karen walked decisively towards him, closing the door. Jack, what happened? She asked worriedly. Seeing her genuinely concerned eyes, Jack felt the ice of resentment recede a little. I just got fired, he said hoarsely, accused of stealing company money. Karen's mouth dropped open in amazement. What? But that's absurd. You couldn't do that. Jack smiled bitterly. Thank you for believing. But the bosses decided otherwise. They set me up, it seems, very cleverly. Karen came closer. Who set him up? Could it be? She stopped short, but they both knew who she meant. Jack clenched his fist. I think you know who. Sam knew all the moves. Apparently, he decided to get rid of me once and for all. Karen shook her head, her face flushing with indignation. This is monstrous. I will go to the management and tell them that this is a mistake. Jack stopped her with a gesture. Thank you, Karen, but it won't change anything. All the documents are against me. They even threatened to call the police. Karen bit her lip, looking at him sympathetically. God, I'm so sorry. Jack, having loaded the last folder into the box, sank into a chair. He had no strength left at all. I have nothing left now, he whispered. No family, no job. Tears came to his eyes again, and he turned away, ashamed of his weakness. Karen gently placed her hand on his shoulder. Jack, you're not alone. Do you hear me? There are people who are on your side. He raised his reddened eyes. Thank you. I find it hard to believe now. She sat down next to him. I understand, but know this. If you need help any kind, call me. Day and night, okay? Jack nodded, touched by her concern. Fine. 10 minutes later, he was ready. A low pile of personal belongings in a box was all that remained of his 7 years of work there. Jack stood up and, trying not to meet his colleague's eyes, walked out of the office. Karen walked alongside him, offering to help him carry the box, but he declined. They walked through the lobby past the security guards. Jack felt like a criminal, even though he had done nothing wrong. In the parking lot, he put the box on the trunk lid. Karen asked quietly, "What are you going to do next?" Jack rubbed his face tiredly with his palm. "I have no idea. Look for a job, deal with the police if it comes to that. Raise the kids." He shrugged helplessly. Karen sighed. "You'll cope, I'm sure. You just need to come to your senses now." Jack looked at her, sincere and worried about him. "Thank you, Karen, for everything." "You're welcome," she replied warmly. "And remember, you can count on me." He smiled weakly, opened the car, and put the box inside. "See you later," Jack said quietly. Karen touched his hand goodbye. "Take care of yourself." When her figure disappeared behind the office door, Jack got into the car. He sat there for a few more minutes, staring blankly at the windshield. Everything that had happened seemed like a nightmare, but it was reality, his new, crumbling life. Jack pulled out of the parking lot without any idea where to go. He didn't want to go back to the empty house, but he couldn't stay there either. He had lost his job, the trust of his management and colleagues, and even more difficult trials loomed ahead: divorce, finding a living, restoring his name. His hands on the wheel were shaking slightly. Jack pulled over to the side of the road to calm himself. He closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths. He remembered the faces of Sophia and Max. For them, he had to hold on. "I won't break," he said to himself mentally, although he couldn't say the words out loud. After a while, he headed home, feeling empty. Sam's betrayal had deprived him of both his family and his career. Jack was left alone with his grief and heavy thoughts about the future. Thick twilight fell on the quiet suburban area. It was already the second half of March. After the dismissal and family upheavals, Jack was in a depressed state. But it was precisely during these difficult days that Karen appeared by his side, an unexpected support that he had not noticed before. He quit the company, and although he had not yet been officially reported to the police, Jack's reputation was tarnished. He was not looking for a new job, and who would hire an employee involved in a scandal? The money set aside for a rainy day was enough for a couple of months. It was a particularly dreary evening. The kids were at Lisa's, having taken them for the weekend. The empty house was silent. Jack sat in the kitchen in the semi-darkness, staring at a stack of bills and receipts. Without work, his finances were rapidly melting away. The mortgage on the house, utility bills, the first expenses for divorce lawyers. During the day, he met with his lawyer. He prepared a divorce petition, voiced Lisa's demands for division of property and custody. Lisa insisted on joint custody of the children and wanted to sell the house to divide the proceeds. This news alone was enough to make Jack's hands drop. The house where Sophia and Max grew up could be lost. He ran his palms over his tired face. The untouched dinner was cooling on the stove. The cup of tea was getting cold. He didn't want to eat. He just wanted to close his eyes and wake up somewhere in another life. In the silence, the phone vibrated. Jack jumped and glanced at the screen. It was Karen. He hesitantly accepted the challenge. "Hello, Karen." "Hello, Jack," came a soft voice. "Did I wake you up?" "No," Jack cleared his throat hoarsely. "I'm not sleeping." "I was thinking about you," she said frankly. "How are you holding up?" Jack looked at the piles of papers in front of him. "It's been better, to be honest. But it's okay. I'm holding on as best I can." There was a short pause on the line. Then Karen hesitantly suggested, "You know, maybe I should come over to your place, if you don't mind." Jack was surprised by her request. He looked at his watch. It was about 9 in the evening. "Do you want to come now?" "If you don't mind," she repeated softly. "I think you could use some company, but it's up to you." Jack found himself desperately wanting not to be alone. After a moment of thought, he quietly replied, "Come, I'll be glad." About half an hour later, the doorbell rang. Jack quickly walked into the hallway and opened it, trying not to make any noise. Karen stood on the threshold with a small cardboard box in her hands. She smiled slightly embarrassedly. I hope I'm not too late. What are you saying? Come in. Jack stepped aside. Karen walked inside. She was wearing a simple gray sweater and jeans, her brown hair pulled back into a ponytail, as if she had come straight from home without much preparation. Jack suddenly noticed that she looked a little tired, but her eyes were warm. I picked up something for tea, she said, and lifted the box. In the kitchen, where he led her, Karen opened her baggage. There was an apple pie and some cinnamon rolls she had baked. I think the kids will enjoy it this morning, she said with a smile. Jack touched the box. It was warm. Did you bake this especially for us? He asked, touched. Karen blushed slightly. I just decided to take my mind off things in the evening. Well, and I wanted to please you a little. Thank you, Jack said sincerely. That's very handy. Let me make some tea. Go ahead, she nodded. You don't have to solve problems with alcohol. Jack filled the kettle with water and put it on the stove. While the water was boiling, he quickly brought relative order to the table, moved the papers into one pile, removed the empty mugs. Karen watched silently without making unnecessary comments. Soon they were sitting across from each other with mugs of hot tea and a plate of freshly baked pie. The air smelled of apples and cinnamon. Jack felt the tension of the day ease a little. Tell me how you are, Karen began quietly, breaking the silence. How was your day? Jack sighed heavily. I was at the lawyer's. We discussed the terms of the divorce. Nothing pleasant. It looks like the house will have to be sold. Lisa is standing her ground. Karen shook her head sadly. Well, and the children? The kids. You can see for yourself. He nodded toward the corridor. Sophia is angry at the whole world. She barely talks to me. Max constantly asks when Mom will come home. I try to hold on for them, but it's not easy. The corners of his eyes were starting to burn unpleasantly again. He looked down at his cup so Karen wouldn't notice. She noticed. She carefully touched his hand. Jack, I'm so sorry you have to go through this. He silently squeezed her fingers, making it clear that he appreciated her sympathy. A minute later, Karen spoke again, changing the subject. Sorry, I heard something about work. Sam took your place in the project, didn't he? Jack smiled wryly. Yes, a couple more weeks, and look, he'll become the head of the department. All the cards are in his hands. Karen frowned. Many in the company don't believe that you are guilty. Colleagues say among themselves that you were set up. Jack shrugged. Even if that's the case, it doesn't make things any easier for me. My reputation is a black mark. I'm unlikely to find a job anywhere now. Have you tried looking yet? She asked. I sent my resume to a couple of companies. Jack nodded. Silence. Probably the recommendations from my former management will close doors for me for a long time to come. Karen was silent for a moment, clearly thinking about something, then looked up at him. You know, what if we try not looking for a job? Jack didn't understand. In terms of, she leaned forward slightly, lost in her own thoughts. What if you create a job for yourself? Start your own business? Jack blinked in surprise. The idea seemed so far removed from his current problems that he was at a loss. My own business. Karen, I don't have the money or the strength for that right now. Business is serious business. Karen smiled softly. I'm not saying it's easy, but think about it. You're a great engineer, you have a lot of experience. You were respected by your clients. Why not try working for yourself? No longer dependent on bosses like our Collins. Jack paused. Yes, the idea sounded tempting, but he was afraid to even begin to think along those lines. It's too risky, he finally said. I need investments, connections, and I'm almost bankrupt. Not exactly, Karen countered. You still have your professional skills and your reputation as an honest person among those who know you personally. That's the capital, too. Jack smiled sadly. I don't know, Karen. I'm scared to make decisions like that now. I have kids, a mortgage. If everything goes to hell, I won't forgive them. Karen was silent, allowing him to voice his fears. Then she said firmly, You are not alone. If we decide, we will do it together. Jack raised his head. What do you mean? She took a deep breath. I don't work for the company anymore either. Today was my last day. Jack was taken aback. You quit? Because of me? Karen shook her head. Because of myself. After what they did to you, I can't stay there. Besides, Sam has become my de facto boss, and I don't trust him. The atmosphere is disgusting. I thought about it and decided to leave. Jack looked at her with admiration and fear at the same time. Wow, this is a bold step. Exactly, Karen nodded. I made a bold move. Now it's your turn. He laughed quietly for the first time in a long time. It turns out that we both have a lot of free time now, which can be used wisely, she picked up. Jack, let's try. Let's open a small construction company. We have enough connections to find the first orders. We will try for the clients, and most importantly for ourselves. There was such enthusiasm in her voice that something warmed Jack's chest. He imagined his own office even at home, the two of them working on projects, choosing their own clients, no treachery behind their backs. Of course, there are risks, but, well, he said slowly, the idea isn't the worst. Karen beamed. Is it true? Jack noticed how she became prettier with joy and couldn't help but smile. Yes, maybe this is the solution. They began to discuss the idea, which had not yet been worked out loud. They decided to start without delay. Register a small company. Fortunately, there were not many legal formalities. Work from home at first, so as not to spend money on an office. Find small orders through familiar contractors or old clients. Karen was full of concrete proposals. She had long cherished the dream of her own design bureau and was now laying out her accumulated thoughts. Jack listened, becoming more and more confident. Yes, he could do it. He could be in demand again and prove his professional honor again. And Karen was there, a reliable comrade. Time flew by while they were talking. The clock hands had already passed midnight when Karen suddenly remembered. Wow, it's already late. You have to get up early tomorrow with the kids. I have to go. Jack was also surprised at how long they talked. He felt much lighter than he had a few hours earlier. Thank you for coming, he said, getting up from the table. I'm very glad you don't mind, she smiled. You never know, you might want to be alone. There's nothing worse than loneliness right now, Jack answered honestly and immediately felt embarrassed by his own frankness. Karen nodded understandingly. Well, from now on, no more loneliness. We have a team. They walked into the hallway. Jack helped Karen put on her coat. Opening the front door, he suddenly felt a surge of gratitude and tenderness for this woman who had extended her hand to him in his most difficult moment. Karen, he said quietly. She turned around, raising her eyebrows questioningly. Yes, Jack was momentarily at a loss under her shining gaze, but then said, You have no idea how much you helped me today. Thank you. Karen smiled softly. I can imagine, Jack, and I'll be there for as long as it takes. We'll get through this together. He wanted to hug her, but he held back and only shook her hand firmly. Until tomorrow. See you tomorrow, she replied. Jack stood in the doorway as Karen got into her car and drove away from the house, waving goodbye. The night was still, and the wind carried the faint sound of a car's engine as it drove away. Jack closed the door and leaned his back against the wall of the hallway. Anxiety and cautious hope warred inside him. Life was still far from normal. Divorce, reputational struggles, financial difficulties. But now he had a goal and someone who believed in him. And that meant that there was a real chance to get out of the darkness. 3 months flew by in toil and excitement. After registering their firm, Walsh and Mitchell Construction, Jack and Karen threw themselves into work. Their office became Jack's living room, a desk with 2 laptops, blueprints spread out on the sofa, and a board with a schedule on the wall. Every morning, Jack habitually began by taking care of the children. Sophia and Max now lived with him most of the time and visited their mother on weekends. In the morning, Jack cooked them breakfast, drove them to school, and then returned home at 9 o'clock to immerse himself in the firm's affairs. One such day, Jack walked into the makeshift office, shaking the morning drizzle off his coat. Karen was already there, scrolling through her latest email on the screen. "Good morning," she greeted him. "Hello," Jack said, sitting down at the table. "Any news?" Karen shook her head slightly. "Not yet. We are waiting for a response from Marriott Construction and a couple of other companies to which we sent proposals." Jack nodded and opened his laptop. The silence of the room was broken only by the quiet hum of the system unit and the clicking of the keyboard. In the 3 months of the company's existence, they managed to fulfill only 2 small orders. This was enough to cover modest expenses and pay Jack another installment on the mortgage. There was no need to talk about profit. The money earned from orders immediately went to life and the needs of the business. At about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Karen stretched in her chair. "It's time to take a break. Maybe we can go get some coffee." Jack rubbed his tired eyes. "Come on, otherwise I'm starting to look askance at numbers." They went out onto the porch. It was a warm spring day, and the late tulips Lisa had planted were blooming in the front garden. Jack and Karen walked slowly down the street to the nearest cafe, enjoying the moment of respite. "How is Sophia?" Karen asked cautiously, breaking the silence. Jack smiled sadly. "He keeps to himself. He speaks to me every other word, always looking downcast. At school, teachers complain he's in the clouds during lessons." Karen nodded sympathetically. "It's difficult for her. Transitional age plus such trauma." "I know," Jack answered quietly. "I try to talk to her, but she pushes me away, and forcing her is useless." "Maybe a psychologist?" Karen suggested. Jack sighed. "I'm afraid she won't talk to him either. Time is needed here, and patience." Karen touched his shoulder gently. "You have more than enough patience. Everything will work out, you'll see." They bought 2 takeout coffees and headed back. At the gate, Jack noticed the mailman dropping something into the mailbox. He picked up the fresh mail and glanced at the envelopes. A bill, an advertisement, a letter from the city police department. Jack tensed and opened the envelope. Inside was a notice that the investigation into financial fraud at Boston Industries had been closed due to lack of evidence. "Is this good news?" Karen asked, watching him study the document. Jack breathed a sigh of relief. "Very much so. The case was closed. It's a real weight off my shoulders." Karen slapped his hand happily. "You see, I told you, the truth will prevail." Jack smiled. His mood had noticeably improved. Entering the house, he impulsively put his arm around Karen's shoulders. "Thank you for believing in me from the very beginning." She was a little embarrassed, but smiled. "You're welcome." They returned to work. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the long-awaited call came on the work phone. Karen was the first to grab the receiver, and a minute later, she looked up at Jack with shining eyes. "This is Marriott Construction. We have set up a meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. to discuss our proposal." Jack's heart sank. They had been waiting for a big order for so long, and now this was their real chance. He clenched his fist and exclaimed quietly. "Yes, we need to get ready," Karen said in a businesslike tone, already opening the presentation files on her computer. The rest of the day was spent rehearsing the presentation and thinking through answers to possible questions. The next morning, Jack, dressed in his best suit, picked up Karen, and together they headed to the potential client's office. In the conference room, they were met by the head of the contracting department, Mr. Marlowe, a tall, solid man of about 50. He listened attentively to Jack and Karen's presentation, nodding occasionally. Everything went smoothly until, at the end of the meeting, Mr. Marlowe, leafing through Jack's resume, narrowed his eyes. "Walsh. I think I've heard that name. Did you work for Boston Industries before?" Jack felt his back tense. He answered shortly. "Yes, that's right. I worked there for 7 years." Marlowe drawled. "I heard you had an unpleasant incident there." Karen glanced at Jack. He kept his expression impassive and said calmly, "It was a misunderstanding. Everything is settled now. It wasn't my fault." Mr. Marlowe was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Glad to hear it." He put the papers aside and made a steeple with his fingers. "Well, gentlemen, your proposal is interesting to us. Let's try to start cooperation on one object. If you cope on time and with high quality, we will discuss expansion. Jack and Karen exchanged glances of hidden joy. Thank you, you won't regret it, Jack promised firmly. When they left the Marriott construction office with a signed contract for their first serious contract, Karen couldn't resist and quietly hugged Jack right by the elevators. We did it, Jack, she whispered, beaming with happiness. Jack, feeling her warm hands, pressed Karen to himself for a moment. It worked. Thank you, partner. They shyly broke apart when they saw people coming out of the elevator and looked at each other cheerfully. The following weeks were busy. The project they received required a lot of calculations and drawings. They had to design the metal frame of a large shopping pavilion. Jack and Karen worked from morning until evening, occasionally going to the construction site for approvals. Sometimes they worked until late, after which Karen stayed overnight in the guest room. It was easier to get back to the drawings in the morning. Things were gradually improving. The company's bank account had a noticeable positive balance for the first time. Jack even allowed himself to put aside some money for personal needs. The children's visit to the dentist and other family expenses were ahead. However, if everything was going smoothly at work, then the relationship with the children required a lot of attention, especially with Sophia. The girl never forgave her mother. Once a week, according to a temporary agreement, the children went to Lisa for the weekend. Max eagerly rushed to his mother. Lisa spoiled her son with gifts and trips to entertainment centers, and Sophia increasingly stayed with her father under the pretext of schoolwork or poor health. One Saturday evening, when Max was at Lisa's and Sophia refused to go and was sitting in her room, Lisa herself called Jack. "Hello?" she said tiredly. "Hello," Jack said. He could hear the worry in her voice. "Jack, I don't know what to do." Lisa began quietly. "Sophia simply rejects me. Today, she told me straight out that she hates me and doesn't want to see me." Jack closed his eyes. He knew that Sophia and her mother had a difficult conflict. "She's very angry, Liz, and hurt. I understand." The ex-wife's voice wavered. "But she is my daughter, and it's like I've lost her." She doesn't even want to explain. There was a muffled sobbing sound on the line. Lisa was crying. "Could you talk to her?" she suddenly asked through her tears. "Maybe she'll hear you. She loves you." Jack shuddered at these words. He remembered their family row that night, then Sophia rather blamed him. But since then, she has realized a lot. "Okay, I'll try," he replied, looking at the closed door of his daughter's room. "Thank you," Lisa whispered. "And—" She paused, then added quietly, "I'm sorry, Jack, for everything." Jack was silent, unable to find anything to answer. "I don't apologize," Lisa continued bitterly. "I know it's late. It's just, I'm really sorry, especially when I see how children suffer." "I'm sorry too," Jack said dully. "I'll talk to Sophia. Goodbye, Lisa." He knocked carefully on Sophia's door. "What?" A gloomy voice was heard. Jack walked in. His daughter was lying on the bed, scrolling through her phone feed, pretending not to be happy to see her father. Jack sat down on the edge of the bed. "Mom called," he said calmly. Sophia rolled her eyes. "So what? Complaining about me again?" "She's crying, Soph," Jack answered quietly. "She's very sad without you." The girl snorted. "She's to blame." Jack didn't know what to say. He stroked Sophia's hand, but she pulled away. "Honey," he began softly, "you have every right to be angry. Mom did something bad. We both know that." Sophia sat up abruptly, throwing the phone away. "Bad? She destroyed our family. I don't want to see her." His daughter's round eyes filled with tears. Her voice broke. Jack felt his heart squeeze. "I understand you," he said seriously. "I myself was very hurt and offended. But Mom remains your mom. She loves you." "Don't say that," Sophia cried out, tears rolling down her cheeks. "If you loved me, you wouldn't do that." Jack moved slightly closer and hugged his daughter. She tried to break away, but he did not let go, and then Sophia burst into tears on his chest. I know, baby, I know, Jack whispered, stroking her back. It hurts so bad to be betrayed. You feel like you've been lied to, cheated. It's scary. Sophia sobbed, her fingers clutching tightly to her father's shirt. Jack closed his eyes, fighting his own pain, torn by the open wounds. But Soph, listen. It's very hard to carry hatred inside you, he said quietly, continuing to hug his daughter. It eats you up from the inside. I'm not asking you to forgive Mom now. Just give yourself time. Don't push her away completely. She's with Sam now. Sophia croaked through her tears. How could she? He was like an uncle to us. Jack hugged his daughter tighter. I don't know, dear. Adults sometimes do terrible, stupid things. He pulled back slightly, looking into his daughter's eyes. Just promise me one thing. Don't blame yourself. You're not to blame for any of this. Sophia shook her head. I don't blame her. I just can't forgive her for this. Jack nodded. I understand, and don't put pressure on yourself. Just know that no matter what, you still have a mom and dad who adore you. We just live separately now. Sophia had already calmed down a little. She wiped her eyes with her fist and asked in a muffled voice, You don't love your mother anymore either, right? Jack felt a lump in his throat. How to explain all this complexity to a 13-year-old girl, he answered as he felt. Mom and I can't be together anymore, but we both love you and Max. That will never change. Sophia nodded and buried her face in his chest again. They sat there for a long time until the sobbing died down. Finally, Jack whispered, let's go somewhere tomorrow. Just you and me. Sophia raised her head. What about work? Work can wait, the father smiled. Let's take a day off. We can go to the lake or just walk around town, wherever you want. Sophia's eyes brightened slightly for the first time in a long time. Maybe. To an amusement park? Jack laughed. Anywhere, princess. To the park, so to the park. Sophia smiled faintly, perhaps for the first time in many days. Jack's heart melted at the sight of that smile. Okay, Dad, she said quietly. Thank you. Thank you for talking to me, he replied, gently kissing his daughter on the top of her head. That night, Jack lay awake, feeling empty and relieved. There were still many challenges ahead, both at work and at home. But he had taken a step toward regaining his daughter's trust. That meant he was on the right track. In the darkness, he couldn't help but think back to the path that had led him to this moment. It seemed like a lifetime had passed since the world had collapsed that night when he learned of Lisa's betrayal. He remembered standing on the threshold of an empty house, not knowing how to live on, how he had been tormented by the loss of his family, his job, his trust in people. And then Karen had appeared. Just think, they had been just colleagues without a single romantic thought. But fate had strangely turned their lives towards each other. And now he was lying in the darkness on the eve of an important day with this amazing woman whom he loved with all his heart. Jack smiled in the darkness. So all the trials were worth it. He even felt a strange gratitude to fate and, paradoxically, to his former friend and wife for unwittingly pushing him to new achievements. Without those blows, he might never have known that he was capable of loving so much and being loved so much. Thank you, he whispered softly into the empty room, either to God or to life. Tomorrow was a new chapter, and he was ready to meet it. Autumn brought changes not only in business, but also in Jack's soul. The company, Walsh and Mitchell Construction, which he opened together with Karen, was gaining momentum. They completed their first small projects successfully, and gradually new clients appeared. But most importantly, Karen became an increasingly important part of his life. During the day, they worked side by side, and in the evening, she sometimes stayed to help him with the children, take Sophia to a club, or read to Max before bed. Jack was surprised that he hadn't noticed how caring and kind Karen was before. She always knew what to say to cheer him up. When Max fell ill in the fall and spent several days with a fever, it was Karen who sat by his bed at night, changing his compress. Sophia was a bit cold at first, but seeing how Karen supported her father and brother, she gradually thawed. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Jack and Karen were working late in the living room, sorting out estimates. A cold rain was pouring outside. Karen, noticing Jack rubbing his temples tiredly, went into the kitchen and returned with 2 mugs of hot tea. "Take a break, engineer," she said softly, placing the mug in front of him. "You've been working on drawings all day today." Jack looked up at her and for the first time saw clearly that this was not just a colleague, but a close person. There was so much compassion and tenderness in her warm gaze that his heart sank. "Thank you, Karen," he said quietly, "for everything." She sat down next to him on the sofa. "No need to thank me. Shouldn't friends support each other?" Jack suddenly felt an overwhelming desire to tell the truth. "You are more than a friend to me." Karen froze, her eyes darting up. Their gazes met. Jack's heart thumped loudly in his chest. He leaned a little closer. Karen didn't pull away, only her breathing quickened. "Karen," he whispered hoarsely, and she kissed him. Lightly, timidly, she touched his lips with hers. Jack froze for a moment in surprise, and then responded, gently pressing her to himself. The rain outside the window pounded the glass, and they heard nothing but their own heartbeat. That night, Jack and Karen confessed to each other that they had long felt more than just friendly affection. Jack told how he had been afraid to trust a woman again, and how Karen had dispelled his fears with her presence. Karen admitted that she had loved him even when he was completely broken, and had held back her feelings so as not to embarrass him. The next morning, Sophia walked into the kitchen and found her dad hugging Karen at the stove. The girl looked at him in surprise, and Max, blinking his eyes, asked point blank, "Dad, so Aunt Karen is your girlfriend now?" Jack and Karen looked embarrassed, looked at each other, and laughed. "You could say that," Jack answered his son softly. Sophia said nothing, but when Karen, smiling shyly, came up to her later to talk, the girl suddenly hugged her impulsively. Karen gasped in surprise, then patted Jack's daughter on the back. Sophia muttered, "I'm glad Daddy isn't alone," and ran upstairs, embarrassed by her emotions. Jack felt a huge sense of relief. The family had accepted their relationship. A new chapter in his life was beginning this time with Karen by his side, not just as a friend, but as a woman he loved. Winter brought both trials and joys to the Walsh family. The divorce was settled relatively peacefully. By December, Jack and Lisa's marriage was officially dissolved. The decision was made to leave the house to the children. Lisa refused her share, feeling guilty for what had happened. So Jack stayed to live with Sophia and Max in the old house. Karen actually moved in with them, only visiting her apartment occasionally to check the mail and pick up things. By the new year, they were already living as one family. Jack was initially worried about how the children would cope with this change, but he soon realized everyone only benefited. The house was filled with smiles again. Sophia helped Karen cook dinners. Max loved to play board games with her in the evenings. Jack's relationship with Lisa also became calmer. They communicated only on business on issues of children. Lisa, feeling guilty, tried not to complicate the situation. When Max or Sophia returned from her, Jack patiently listened to their stories, not allowing himself to say a bad word about his ex-wife. Karen fully supported him in this. Jack had something special in mind for Christmas. He realized that he didn't want to wait any longer with a serious decision. Karen had become a real family member for him and for the children too. On the eve of the holiday, he went to a jewelry store and spent a long time choosing a ring. He settled on an elegant gold one with a small diamond, strict and graceful like Karen herself. On Christmas morning, under the decorated tree, in addition to the presents for the children, there was a small blue envelope. When the whole family sat down to unpack the surprises, Jack took the envelope and handed it to Karen. She looked at him in surprise, and Sophia and Max looked at each other with beaming faces. They already knew what Dad had planned. Karen opened the envelope and read the note. "Karen, will you marry me?" At the bottom were the signatures, Jack, Sophia, and Max. Karen caught her breath, not believing her eyes. Jack was already down on one knee in front of her, holding an open velvet box with a ring in his hand. Sophia threw up her hands. Max froze with his mouth open. Karen, Jack began solemnly, although his voice trembled slightly, you've made us all very happy. We love you. Marry me, please. Karen's eyes filled with tears of joy. She covered her mouth with her hands, then nodded quickly. Yes, of course, yes. The children screamed with delight. Max jumped around. Sophia rushed to hug Karen, now calling her Mom without any reservations. Jack slipped the ring onto his bride's trembling finger, and Karen, laughing through her tears, pulled him into a hug. The four of them huddled together under the lights, a family that had been through grief and now had new hope. In the following days, the house was filled with wedding preparations. They decided not to delay. They scheduled the ceremony for early May. Karen did not want a lavish wedding, just a small celebration with family and closest friends. They filed an application with the registry office, rented a gazebo in the city park on the shore of the lake, and off-site registration was planned there. The good news was shared with his family. Jack's parents, who live in Florida, were stunned at first, but when they heard their son's cheerful voice on the phone, they blessed him and promised to come. Sister Karen from California was also planning to fly in with her family. Even Lisa, having learned about the engagement from her children, sent a brief congratulation through her friends. Jack appreciated this small sign. It seemed that everyone was eager to move on. The days were filled with pleasant worries. Karen chose a dress. She settled on a modest cream knee-length dress. Without unnecessary decorations, Jack updated his suit. Sophia tried on a soft pink bridesmaid dress. Max bought a small tuxedo. The boy was terribly proud that he would be the ring bearer. In the evenings at dinner, they now discussed not school or work, but the wedding, who would stand where, what menu to order. The house was buzzing with cheerful bustle. Who would have thought a year ago, Karen said late one evening, snuggling up to Jack under the covers. No one, he agreed, kissing her forehead, but I'm infinitely glad that everything happened this way. A warm May day arrived the wedding day. From the morning, excitement reigned in Jack's house. The bride and her friends locked themselves in the bedroom. Karen was putting on her dress. Her sister was helping to fasten small white daisies in her hair. Sophia was spinning around, looking admiringly at the new mother. For the first time in a long time, the girl looked absolutely happy. Jack, by tradition, was not supposed to see the bride before the ceremony, so he hung around the other end of the house. He fussed over Max, helping his son button his waistcoat and tie his bow tie properly. Dad, are we beautiful? Max asked, sticking out his chest and looking into the large mirror in the hallway. Jack dropped to one knee and adjusted the boutonniere on his son's lapel. We are the most beautiful and important today, my friend. Max nodded proudly and ran to the kitchen to show off his outfit to his grandmothers. Jack's parents and Karen's parents, who had met the day before, had already become friends. At breakfast, Mr. Walsh winked at his son-in-law. So, are you ready, son? Are you nervous? Jack smiled and, although his heart was beating fast, answered, calm as a tank, Dad. Everyone laughed, realizing, of course, that the groom was no less nervous than the bride. By midday, a beribboned van had taken the guests and children to the park where the ceremony was taking place. Jack rode ahead with his father and Max. Karen left later with her mother and friends so that Jack could see her at the altar. The park by the lake was like paradise. Everything was blooming and green. White chairs for guests were set out on the lawn under the open sky, and the arch for the bride and groom was decorated with flowers. Guests were gathering, chatting joyfully. Jack stood by the arch, adjusting his cuffs and trying to breathe more evenly. Max took a place next to him with a pillow on which 2 rings glittered. The boy held himself very seriously, trying not to move. Is everything okay? Jack asked him in a whisper. Max nodded, not taking his eyes off the path. The bride was about to walk down. And then the music began to play. The gentle sounds of the violin flowed over the water. The guests fell silent. Sophia was the first to walk down the carpet. She strewed the path with rose petals, carefully scooping them out of a basket. Karen appeared next, arm in arm with her father-in-law, Mr. Walsh. Jack gasped to himself when he saw the bride. Karen was beautiful. Her cream-colored silk dress gracefully hugged her figure. Her chestnut hair was in waves, sparkling with white daisies, and her veil was a light haze around her happy face. Karen looked straight at Jack and couldn't help but smile. Having led the bride to the arch, the father carefully handed her hand to Jack. He felt Karen's fingers trembling and gently squeezed them, letting her know that she was not alone. The registrar, an elderly man, smiled warmly at the young couple and announced the beginning of the ceremony. "Dear friends, we have gathered on this beautiful day to witness the birth of a new family." He spoke of love and mutual respect, of what Jack and Karen had been through and still had the ability to love. Jack barely heard the words. He was looking at Karen. Tears of happiness glistened in the corners of her eyes. It was time for the vows. The registrar gave the floor to the groom. Jack cleared his throat, trying to speak clearly. "Karen, a year ago I was a broken man. I thought that happiness was not for me, but you restored my faith and love. You became a support for me and the children. I promise to always be by your side, to rejoice in happiness, to support you in difficulties. I promise to love and respect you until the end of my days." Karen was barely holding back her tears, smiling through them. Now she took the floor. "Jack, you saved me from loneliness, even though you needed to save yourself. You are the kindest, bravest person I know. You and your children have become my family. I promise to be your faithful wife, friend, and partner. I promise to give you my love and warmth every day. I love you with all my heart." Many of the guests burst into tears. Jack's mother quietly dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, and Karen's grandmother sobbed without embarrassment. The registrar announced the exchange of rings. Max brought the cushion up in time. Jack took the ring with a trembling hand and put it on Karen's finger. She did the same, not without difficulty getting it on the right finger. Both laughed nervously. The guests also began to hum approvingly. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the registrar said solemnly. "You may seal the union with a kiss." Jack carefully lifted Karen's veil and leaned towards her lips. The kiss was tender and very short. Both laughed from excitement and looked sheepishly at the applauding guests. Max, forgetting about the importance of the moment, loudly shouted, "Hooray!" Sophia covered her face with her palms from happiness. To the sounds of cheerful music, the newlyweds, holding hands, walked down the path, showered with rose petals, which were generously thrown by Sophia and Karen's nieces. As they left the tent, Jack suddenly picked Karen up in his arms and spun her around. She clasped her hands in surprise, but then burst into happy laughter. "Bitter, bitter," the friends shouted in unison. The newlyweds readily stopped and kissed again, this time firmly and with laughter. The guests rejoiced. After the ceremony, a small reception was held in the same park. Under the shady trees, tables were set with treats: fresh fruit, snacks, lemonade, and champagne. It was a wonderful, warm evening. The newlyweds accepted congratulations. Jack's mother was the first to hug Karen. "Welcome to the family, daughter." Karen's father shook his son-in-law's hand. "Take care of my girl. She's the only one we have." Jack heard wishes of happiness from all sides. Sophia beamed as she helped pour champagne for the guests, and Max carried a tray of cakes with an air of importance. He was extremely proud that he had done everything right, kept the rings, and hadn't mixed anything up. When it was time for a toast, friend Michael stepped forward and playfully proclaimed, "To love leading the new family, not the wife or husband." Everyone laughed. Jack and Karen drank champagne, looking into each other's eyes. Then Jack's father took the floor. He gave a short but heartfelt speech, ending it simply, "Thank you, children, for finding each other. You are our happiness." Karen broke down and burst into tears, rushing to hug her father-in-law. At the end of the party, a two-tiered wedding cake decorated with cream flowers was brought out onto the table. Jack and Karen cut the top tier together. Everyone gasped with delight as they laughingly fed each other the first pieces. Max, of course, immediately got his portion from Karen's hands. Dusk was falling. The guests began to leave. The children were nodding off from fatigue, so many impressions during the day. Jack's parents took Sophia and Max to spend the night, deciding to give the young couple some time alone. Jack and Karen, finally alone, walked slowly across the empty lawn. The first stars appeared in the sky. A light breeze swayed the lanterns hanging along the path. Karen leaned against her husband's shoulder. "That's it," she said quietly. "We are husband and wife." Jack turned his face to her. "That's it," he echoed, his eyes shining with joy. "And it's just beginning." They kissed under the cover of twilight long, with the taste of sweet cream and champagne. Ahead of them was their first wedding night and many happy days. A new life for the Walsh family has begun, and this time it is truly happy and strong. 6 months passed. Jack often woke up in the morning and looked at Karen sleeping next to him, still not fully believing his happiness. A noisy, carefree life flowed on. The company brought in a stable income. Sophia moved to high school. Max pleased his dad with his success in football. Karen became a real mother for the children. They called her that, no longer remembering the old grievances. One Sunday, Jack took the whole family on a trip out of town to the same clearing by the lake where they got married. On a warm June day, they settled down on the grass. They had a picnic. The children ran along the shore, throwing pebbles into the water. Jack sat with his arm around Karen's shoulders. She laid her head on his chest and said quietly, "You know, sometimes I catch myself thinking that I'm afraid of jinxing our happiness." Jack kissed her hair. "No more storms. We've had our share of suffering." Karen smiled. "I feel like I'm behind a stone wall with you. You're so reliable to me." Jack said nothing. He watched as Sophia and Max called to them from the water to join him. Karen waved at the children. "We'll be there in a minute." "Who would have thought," Jack said quietly, "that after everything we would be sitting here like this together, and it would be so good." "The main thing is that we are together," Karen repeated. "And we will stay together forever," he added confidently. "Forever," she echoed and looked at her husband with bright, happy eyes. Soon they were running along the beach with their children, laughing and splashing. The future no longer frightened Jack. He knew that no matter what happened ahead, his beloved wife and the dearest people his family were nearby, and that meant that everything would be fine. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.